So, we find ourselves back once again in Sean's studio, where we are recording the latest episode of Is It?
Shit.
And today we are looking at something rather complete, cohesive, complex, a lot of comms. The BRAINWORX bollocks mask... I'm sure that's not what that means.
BRAINWORX BX Masterdesk
Pro.
Yes.
Very cool, very cool.
Yeah.
So what doesn't... I'll make this easy for you. What doesn't this do, Sean?
What doesn't it do? It doesn't do your tune for you. But that's about it. It's a very, very fully featured mastering processor. So it has a clipper. It has saturation in various forms. It has 2 lots of EQ, which I don't really understand. So there's controls for low, mid, high, and then presence. And then there's a separate 3-band EQ, which has a bit more control. It has the foundation control that was on the True Peak, which appears to give it some welly. It has the XL control, which I've got on my True Peak as well, which is saturation. It then has THD, which I presume is more saturation.
Yeah.
It has a stereo width enhancement. It has a whole bunch of tools that you might need whilst mastering a track. All in one thing, obviously along with a limiter as well.
Thing I always find with these, if I might, with these sorts of things where you have big change that it runs through.
Yes.
By the time you got to the end, if you go back and change one thing sort of at the beginning, you have to go back and adjust everything. Or do you know what I mean? You can spend a lot of time chasing your tail.
Yes. Do you know what? I found this to be quite a tricky one to review, simply because I have different plugins and hardware units doing various different jobs that this does. So to really hear what it's doing, you kind of have to bypass all of that stuff and just use this. And I would find myself reaching for my favourite mastering EQ and not using the EQ on this.
Yeah.
I would find myself reaching for my favourite stereo, expansion plugin and not using the one on this. I would find myself using my favourite saturation and not using the one on this. I'd end up just using the limiter. Now, I can see that if you haven't got those other plugins yet, or you want to have it all in one place, this might work. But personally, I prefer to have the finer control you get over a dedicated plugin for each of those things.
Can you bypass the bits that you're not using?
Yeah, you don't have to use them.
No,
is there an actual bypass?
Yeah.
I don't think so in some of them. You can set some of the controls to 0, I think. I don't think there's individual bypasses. Some there is. Some of them you can just turn them down by setting them to 0. The metering's pretty good. I mean, it does sound all right. For me, I don't want all of that coming from one plugin. I just find that a little bit too much. I would rather have the control you get from using different plugins. And then different songs need different processing. The same saturation won't work on 2 different songs necessarily.
So maybe you're right. Maybe they're aiming this then at those sort of people that maybe they want to expand their mastering, their master bus a little bit, and they want to try a few different things, and this has got them on.
Maybe
those things on.
I see that working 100% for some people. I would just argue that, do we really need a clipper and 2 different kinds of saturation on this? I'm not sure we do.
What does a clipper do?
It clips the signal, clips it off flat, the waveform, so it gives it a real punch. You have to be careful with clippers, but they can make things sound very punchy. I would say that if this was not so expensive, it might be something I'd be inclined to try.
How much is it?
Well, the full price is $349, which I understand if this was a piece of hardware, it would be thousands.
Yeah.
So that's a deal.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of money for a plugin.
Right.
Still a lot of money for a plugin. In the sale at the moment, it's $199. That's still a lot of money for a plugin.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure this represents the best thing. If this was the best, if I listen to this and straight away I'm like, oh my god, I have to get rid of all those other plugins because this is what I'm using from now on, 100% it might be worth that. But it didn't do that to me.
Okay, so I'm going to say you do get a 14-day demo, obviously.
Yes,
because
Plugin Alliance.
So
they give you.
You can go and give it a go.
You can go and give it a go.
So, Sean, the BRAINWORX BX Masterdesk Pro, is it shit?
Do you know what? This is one of those weird ones where it's not shit. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't want it, and I I find someone mentioned in the
You just
comments,
can't bring yourself to say it, can you?
because it's not shit. That wouldn't be fair. Someone said this about the Keith Tape Face review we did, where they said that's the least enthusiastic I've seen Sean about a plugin that wasn't shit. And I feel similar about this.
Yeah, well,
It's not shit. I'm just not very enthusiastic about it. I'd rather do these things with different plugins, not have them all in one. And I will say I'm not a massive fan of the interface. It's the same as the True Peak limiter that I've got. I don't find it massively easy to see what's going on.
As your pal and your sort of colleague, long-term if this is a plugin that you think is a bit boring and that you wouldn't necessarily buy, but you don't think it's shit, and we run a show called "Is It Shit?" Right? Why are we reviewing it?
Because
why don't we review either plugins that you think are shit, or
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, but everything Plugin Alliance put out generates a lot of attention, and people want to know if it's worth buying. And
views, clicks,
obviously, obviously.
Good. Okay. Speaking of which,
in which case, sod it. It's a bit shit.
There you go. It's a bit shit.
It's a bit shit.
Bit overpriced.
Bit overpriced. Does a bunch of things that I can do better with other plugins.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, and like the video, and we've got an Instagram, Studio Life 101. We have a merch shop. We have Patreon. A whole bunch of stuff. Links are all down below, and we will see you next time.
Rock on.
Bye.